Pyramidal deliberative democracy, revolutionizing information flows by means of technology and citizen engagement. 30 years ago, the technology in this device was worth millions of euros. It's a soundstage, a film studio, a video games arcade, a navigation system, a library, and a universal means of payment. In short, it's an incredibly powerful, portable computer. In 2025, 3 out of every 5 people will have a smartphone. This means that 5 billion citizens will be walking around with a powerful computer in their pocket. This would have been complete science fiction 70 years ago. Today I want to talk about how we can use this technology to transition towards sustainability. To start, we can return 70 years into the past, when Arthur C. Clarke published his science fiction novel, Childhood's End. In the novel, a race of benevolent aliens descend from the heavens and take control of all geopolitical affairs, putting a stop to war, poverty, and waste. As a result, humanity enters a golden age of prosperity, albeit at the cost of its own culture and identity. Today I want to consider a similar scenario. Imagine that 7 billion very tiny nanite-sized aliens, or brain bugs, invade the Earth, each embedding itself inside the brain of a human host, taking complete control of its actions. So as humans we can see and think and feel, but we can't control our own actions. Now the brain bugs are special because they feed off a special kind of energy, self-actualization, or the desire to become the most that one can be. If the brain bugs are to survive on planet Earth, then they have to use their human hosts as tools to, as rapidly as possible, re-engineer the global economy for sustainability and equality. So from a systems thinking perspective, the brain bug's paradigm is to feed symbiotically on human self-actualization, and therefore their system goal is to build a maximally sustainable and equitable human civilization. Now the brain bugs bring no special technology with them, but they do have a very special skill, and that is that they can instantly and telepathically communicate among one another. This allows the brain bugs to intervene at the point of information flows, instantly mapping all human knowledge and experience, using that as the basis for near-perfect self-organization, and using that organization as the means to re-engineer the global economy. This means that the brain bugs immediately put a stop to all unnecessary production and consumption, go about mapping all social and environmental systems, and then systematically go about eliminating global poverty and hunger, deploying a global clean energy infrastructure, and replenishing and reinvigorating all ecological systems. Once this process of re-engineering is complete, the brain bugs release control of the human hosts and await their own future. Unfortunately, we can't speculate further about what happens next in the story of the brain bugs. For our purposes, this analogy or thought experiment has 2 purposes. First, it allows us to estimate a maximum capacity factor for sustainability. This means that absent all politics or sociology or history, what is the shortest amount of time that it would take for us to transition towards sustainability? Second, it's clear that humans have a much lower capacity factor because we are mired in politics and sociology and history. We seldom share the same paradigm or system goals, and when we do, self-organization is severely constrained. Now, the purpose of this presentation today is to talk about how we can use those 5 billion portable computers to raise capacity factor over time. Key to that solution is taking everything we know about what makes for successful deliberation and successful collective problem solving among small groups of citizens, and using that information to design and build an application that does exactly that. We can think of this application in terms of a messaging app like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, both a host of special features and functions. Key among these functions is the ability of each citizen to create a small paragraph of text that describes their preferred solution to the problem at hand, a paragraph of text that is editable or changeable at any point. Moreover, each citizen has a vote that they can assign to any solution, including their own. These votes can be assigned and reassigned at any point. So, for example, when a citizen changes or edits their solution, perhaps drawing from those themes that are most popular in the discussion, they may then attract votes. The key idea is that this process of solution creation and editing and voting is driven by communication that is at the core of the application, leading to an iterative process whereby at the end of the day, those original 10 solutions are compressed down into a set of 3 or fewer. The group then selects a delegate who represents these solutions at the next highest tier in the pyramid, which we'll get to in a moment. We can think of this as a deliberative node, a group of 10 or so citizens brought together by means of a bespoke application, and our application has these functions: group formation, communication tools, solution compression, and delegate selection. Now, deliberative nodes are the building blocks for what we call pyramidal networks. Take, for example, a group of 100 citizens. By means of our bespoke application, these citizens self-organize into 10 deliberative nodes, select delegates. Those delegates then self-organize into a deliberative node, and then select a meta-delegate. So what we have here is a pyramidal network comprising 100 citizens at the base, 10 delegates at the next tier, and 1 meta-delegate at the top. We can visualize this process with 1,000 citizens. Here we have those 1,000 citizens self-organizing into deliberative nodes, selecting delegates, going into the center, selecting meta-delegates, and here we can see this network all coming together like such. A pyramidal network comprising 1,000 citizens. The key idea here is scale independence. This means that the pyramidal network operates in the same way whether it comprises 1,000 citizens, 10,000, or 10 million. In fact, in a pyramidal network comprising all 10 billion citizens, there would just be 10 tiers and only 8 intermediary delegates. This means that there would be only 8 intermediary delegates between a citizen at the base of the network and a citizen at the very top tier. Now, there are a number of provisos. What I've described here in terms of pyramidal networks and compression are the bare bones of the model. We can imagine a host of features that would improve this model. There are also a host of theoretical problems, like what drives participation in these networks? How do we avoid elite capture by vested interests? Or how do we prevent a tyranny of the majority, where citizens implement crazy policies? I want to put these problems to the side and focus on our core claim, which is that the scale independence of pyramidal networks may allow us to systematically intervene at the point of information flows. For example, imagine using a pyramidal network to represent the 10 or 20,000 students of a single university institution, using similar networks to map all the students in all the institutions in a single country, and then combining those networks across the world to represent all university students. What kind of power would 150 million students project? What if we did the same for all cities, all countries, all corporations, and all governments? So recall that the brain bugs were able to re-engineer the economy because they intervened at the point of information flows. What I'm suggesting here is that we can use pyramidal networks to do something similar, using those networks to gradually map all human knowledge, experience, and aspirations, use that mapping as the basis for self-organization, and that self-organization as the means to make credible social demands for changes in rules and incentives, which over time would then allow us to re-engineer the global economy at the local, national, and international level. Now, specific changes to rules and incentives in mind: fee and dividend taxes, participatory budgeting, unconditional basic income, monetary reform, workplace democracy, and collaborative consumption. And instead of focusing on any one or any set of these, what I want to focus on is the idea that by changing these rules and incentives, we can create feedback loops. So, for example, pyramidal networks allow us a capacity for self-organization, which allows us to make social demands for changes in rules and incentives, which allows us to deploy public goods projects that change the base parameters of the system. The more successful that those changes are, the greater the participation we can expect in pyramidal networks. And by this logic, the more participation we have, the greater self-organization, and the greater the changes to rules and incentives, so on and so forth. And over time, what we're looking to do then is implement a change in paradigm. Specifically, a change to a paradigm of democratic experimentation, which we can define as an iterative process of problem framing and solution testing among networks of stakeholders at all levels of society. In conclusion then, what I'm suggesting is that if we take those 5 billion computers, and we combine them with pyramidal networks, then we may have a recipe over time for the instantiation of a paradigm of democratic experimentation. And this may allow us to incrementally raise our capacity factor for sustainability over time. So if you take anything away from this presentation, I think it should be this kind of idea that when we begin to harness the capacity of those 5 billion portable computers to enable self-organization at any scale, then humankind will have come to the end of its childhood. Thank you.